Okay, hello people, or anyone who watches, probably no one, probably just watch it myself. Okay, anyway, just here to talk about some, mainly some game settings that could help benefit your gameplay and make it a bit more enjoyable and give you some improvement. So we'll jump straight into it. Now everything I say is purely opinion based, so my suggestion is if you want to try any of these things, simply take a screenshot of your normal settings, and then if you're not happy or you don't like the feel of it, then it's quite easy just to set it back to what it was. So we'll get straight into it. Some of these things are important, some you probably know already, and some are irrelevant. So for gameplay, general, pilot head bob off. Basically what that means, if you have that on, when you're walking you bounce up and down. I don't want that. I just want I want as less movement as possible so I can concentrate on the things I need to do. Hide holstered gear. If you have that on, then basically anything you have equipped but are not using you won't see. So perhaps if you like a clean looking javelin, you don't want the gun strapped to your back, you could turn that on. I like to see what other weapon I have, because sometimes, believe it or not, if you have two guns that are similar, you might be confused to which one you actually are using. It sounds stupid, but it does happen. When it comes to controls, okay, this is a little bit important here. So I don't play with inverted look, but that is purely and solely personal preference. I prefer hold for sprint, hold for flight mode, and hold for zoom when I'm ADSing, so when I'm aiming down sights with my gun. Because they are more responsive. So especially just in general, if you play any first person shooter games, you always want to put your zoom to hold. You will you'll have more chance of winning any gunfight. But as we aren't playing a first person shooter, this is user versus AI. It's probably still not so relevant, but actually what it does is it allows you to jump between enemies much faster than toggling on, toggling off, because those milliseconds do add up. The flight mode one, you'll get a lot of benefit out of that. So basically, as you fly, as soon as you release your flight button, you will stop flying, and that will allow you to go straight into melee, or you can go straight to your gun. Zoom in as you're dropping down, so you can drop down and you can start shooting at people. When you're playing in free mode, if you're struggling overheating, you can just sort of tap that on and off, and you'll get some extra mileage, because you'll fly and you'll drop, fly, drop, fly, and it's instantaneous when you press it. So those things, I believe, they are a must-have. But again, if you don't like that, that's your opinion and your choice. I don't use a controller, so I won't go into that at all. For mouse and keyboard, these things here are very important. Your flight precision, swim precision, flight and swim smoothing. Put all these down to low, and basically what you will gain is you will have instant response when you move your javelin up or down, left or right. The higher you have that number up, the slower it takes for your javelin to be responsive to that, and you'll feel like you're perhaps floating, if that makes sense. Like it's like when you're swimming in water, you'll have that sort of feeling the higher the number you have. But if you have that number set to 0, it's as soon as you move your joystick, if you're using a controller or your mouse, it will happen straight away. I highly recommend changing those 4 things there. Auto centering delay, I like to have mine on 0. Again, it's just personal preference. For the key bindings, this is what I run with. I have quite big hands, so I can have a fair space on my keyboard. Now, one thing I will say is, for your key bindings, really you want to have it the same in every single game you play. So for example, these, just to show you quickly, these are my key bindings. Okay. So every game I play, I will always have E as interact, F as run, shift as crouch, middle mouse button as grenade. Every single game I play, I try to make my settings as much as I can from the game's perspective to marry up or be the same as another game I play. And what happens is that means you can play any game without having to overthink or think twice what button you need to press. And in games that are fast paced and action, this will save you a lot of deaths and a lot of confusion by hitting the wrong button. Perhaps you wanted to get your gun out, but in another game that means pull out your grenade. If you can understand that, you'll just get confused. So try to always keep them the same for every game. And for Anthem, it does make a difference where you assign your mouse buttons. For example, I'll just use my middle mouse button, grenade. For your components or your abilities, your masterwork item, sometimes it will say you gain a 30% middle mouse button bonus. So I want that on my grenade. If it's for that, if I think it's more beneficial for my grenade, maybe it might be for ability 2, mouse 5, that's for my assault launcher. So you need to make sure that you set these to the right place to gain the right ability for the right masterwork item. It does make quite a big difference. So the things you use the most or you believe are the most powerful, you want to set those to gain those bonuses. So I won't go too much into that because it is quite in depth. That could be a video within itself perhaps. Audio, that's purely and solely up to the individual. That's just what I have. For video, display settings, so I always play on 1440 at 144 Hz as I have quite a good system. I run a Inno GTX 1080, a i7 7700K overclocked to 4.8, 32 gig of DDR4 RAM, Windows 10, and I play on a G-Sync 140 Hz monitor. So you always, when you play games, you always want to have it set to full screen, and you want to make sure that in your screen settings that you have it set to full screen for all games. If you play with a NVIDIA GPU, make sure you go into just right click on your normal monitor screen, go into your settings, make sure that it's set 1 at your Hertz refresh rate, whatever the maximum Hertz refresh rate for your monitor is, and 2 that it's set on full screen for all games. You'll get a frame boost from this. Vertical sync, because I have a G-Sync monitor, I have that turned off. Generally you would turn that off. You only turn that on if your computer's really struggling. Maybe you're bottlenecking between your CPU and your GPU. Usually you'll gain some benefit from having that off. HDR mode, you'd have that off if you have a lower end system. Again, I won't go too much into graphic settings because that is purely system based and that's not what this video is about. For graphic settings, this is quite important. Turn motion blur off. That's just a distraction. You don't need that. That will negatively affect your gameplay. Depth of field, I like to have that on. So basically what happens is when I zoom in, I can focus in on the one thing. Camera shake, turn that off. So when you're getting shot or there's an explosion or anything happening around you, you won't, your screen won't shake so much. Now, if you really like that immersion factor and the dramatization of that, of course, leave that on. But if you play because you actually want to win or you're a bit more competitive, you'd turn that off, and you'd do that for every single game you play. You'd always have motion blur and camera shake off if possible. Advanced graphic settings, this is what I have. I haven't touched these at all. These are set by my NVIDIA control panel. I get 80 frames per second on average, which is more than adequate for a game like this, which is basically a third person user versus AI. There's no need to try to gain a lot of frames, but for example, if I was playing a first person shooter game, which I play a lot of, perhaps Battlefield 5, Apex Legends, PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, etc., I would have every single thing here set to low. The only things I would set are texture quality and mesh quality, and I'd put both of those perhaps to medium or high. I'd toggle between, and I would try to keep my frames to my maximum refresh rate for my monitor, which is 144 Hz. But actually for this game, there's no need for that because you're not playing against other people, so you don't need to gain that millisecond advantage as you do in first-person shooters. So really for this game, the beauty of this game is it is a beautiful game by graphics. So play around with your settings. Perhaps if you're struggling, drop everything down, but the two I mentioned, just play around with them, put them up in increments from medium to high to ultra. And if you can keep your game at around 60 frames per second, then you can start turning up some of the other effects as needed. So this is purely based, and of course if you're playing on 1080p, you can have everything set to low and the game will already look beautiful because it's just a higher resolution. It's only when you drop down to perhaps 1080, which a lot of people use, I can understand because good computers are expensive, that's when you'd start to have maybe some resolution differences in your in-game settings. Field of view is important. Ground field of view, really I've kept that, I think I might have put it up a little bit, I can't remember for sure. The zoom one, I have it at 17. Pilot point of view, that's just when you're out of your javelin walking the fortress. I have that to 29, so I bumped that up a bit, and what that means is I can see a little bit more around in the fortress. Flight, you want to turn up as much as you can. I like 80%. You can turn it up to 100 if you prefer, and basically what you will achieve by this is it will give you a larger view of the screen. This is very, very handy when you're playing in free mode, contracts, legendary missions, even in strongholds, because as you fly your javelin will be smaller but you will see more of the screen, so you can see more enemies, you can see more routes or avenues you need to take. But as soon as you come back into gameplay, you'll go straight back into your normal field of view. So I strongly suggest that you tinker with this. Now be warned, if you suffer from any form of motion sickness, you want your FOV down quite low, and that will help you take away the giddiness feeling, so that sick feeling. For swim FOV, I have mine turned up slightly, but you don't really need to play with that because you don't actually spend much time swimming in the water. For these, I've just kept all these the same, I haven't played with them at all. So like I said, this is all just purely personal preference. Some of this I think is a must-have, the ones I sort of emphasise more. Perhaps you could just play around, see if it helps your game style or gameplay. And good luck. I'll try to make some more videos soon about some components and things like that. Predominantly I just play Ranger. I think it's enjoyable for myself, even though my other javelins are quite strong. I have over 200 legendary items, so I've tried a lot of combinations, and if you want to know about the Ranger, you could perhaps watch my last Ranger build video, as that is still relevant now and will be until they introduce the new melee weapons and the new masterwork and legendary for the support. Generally, if you play the Ranger, your strength is in your combo and your melee. Guns, you want to use anything except for a sniper. Preferably you'd use a MMG machine gun as your primary, and perhaps any other gun that you use for a primer for your secondary. But like I said, everything is speculative and purely fun based and personal preference. So I hope this helps some of you, and I'll leave my name in the description. Feel free to add me in Gaming Origin, or you can try to find me on Anthem itself. And if you're a lower level javelin, I'm level 788, but I'll be more than happy to play a lower tier, Grandmaster 1 or anything like that, to help you out and get you through and help you level up. No problem with that. At the moment it's not really worth playing G3, there's no real benefit to it. G2 is fine. If you follow my Ranger builds and you are able to have those components, you can play all G2 maps and missions by yourself, strongholds by yourself. You don't need help. You can finish them quite easily by yourself. When it comes to level 3, Grandmaster 3, it's quite easy for your legendary missions and contracts, but for strongholds with the range, it's a little bit time consuming, so not really worth it. Okay, hope this helps some of you. I'm looking forward to playing a little bit more Anthem in the future once the updates come. Peace out, take care, and enjoy.